Okay, so for C there, I did do those first two steps on the board yesterday, where you group the first two terms together in each bracket because they are the same, and then you notice that there's a minus in the one bracket and then a plus in the other bracket, and then again the same term. So you can create a different way. Otherwise, like I said before, you can just do the longer multiplying out and simplify in the end, you'll get the same answer. So if your working is different, that's fine, but your answer has to be the same, right?
Yeah, oh my God, see, I did it as a difference is good.
That's when you factorize it.
See, in this question, where they're not saying you have to
Simplify, I think. Yes. Let me double check that, because if you were asked to factorize that, it would be a difference of 2 squares. Where's page 36? 6C, yes, it simplifies. So guys, thank you for pointing that out. That's a common error that you just look at the first line and you're like, oh, that's clear. It doesn't 2 squares and factorize it. I don't know, the factorize it, did you end up with it?
no, sorry.
Yeah, so you would have to then, when they're saying simplify, you have to multiply out. Okay, so what I did was I did the shortcut for squaring a binomial there. And then I put my minus, and then in brackets, I used the shortcut for squaring the second binomial. I left those 3 terms in brackets, because remember, we are supposed to subtract the whole bracket squared. So all 3 of these terms need to be subtracted. That's why I left them in a bracket, or in brackets. Then in the next step, I just multiplied my minus 1 in, negative 1 in, and then I simplified the 4x squared and minus 4x squared cancelled out, the plus 9 and minus 9 cancelled out. We have negative 12x minus 12x. Okay, I'm moving down so that you can see the rest. For 6D, I got 8x minus 19 when I did all of that multiplying out. Guys, did we notice that in the first, there was no actual shortcut for that one, right? Because it's not a difference of 2 squares, it's not a binomial squared, it's just a FOILing out. Now guys, what you could have done here, I left the 2 in front and I FOILed out the brackets first. Then I multiplied the 2 in, all right? But you also could have done this. You could have multiplied the 2 into this bracket and gotten 2x minus 4. Remembering that that must then stay in a bracket, which you are then going to have to FOIL out with x plus 3. That's fine. That will get you to the same with these 3 terms at the end, if you do that. Okay, guys, this is all one term. So when you multiply the 2 in, you have to leave it in brackets so that it stays one term. Okay, I know that that's a common mistake. Sometimes you think I'm just going to multiply the 2 in, and then I'm going to just have the other bracket, but you do have to keep it at 2 brackets. Same thing here. Well, not really, because this was a binomial squared. That negative 3 would stay in front, and then you would multiply that in. And here, this is the difference of 2 squares, right? So x squared minus 4. And as from this line to this line, I just did some simplification in my head because I didn't feel like writing everything else just for simplifying 3x minus 2x, right? What is 3x minus 2x? X, right? So these 2 together will just give you plus x. Are we fine with that? So in the bracket, actually, we have x squared plus x minus 6. We simplify that. So then I just multiply the 2 by the x squared and by the x and by the negative 6. Okay, so I did that simplification in my head. Then I multiplied the negative 3 into this bracket to get those ones. And I had my x squared minus 4, simplified everything, and I got to that. Yes. 3x minus 2. Okay, then for 9a, This was the first one where we, and the only one actually, where we had a binomial cube. Okay, so again, you could have done the 3 brackets and multiplied it out the long way. There's nothing wrong with that. Or you could have done that shortcut that we practiced yesterday. So let's just quickly go over that again one last time. All right. You do the first term cubed, so x cubed. Then you say first term squared, so x squared, multiplied by the second term. So you have x squared multiplied by -2. That's -2x squared. Right? That you then multiply by 3 to get -6x squared. Yes? Then for the next term you do second term squared. So -2 squared is +4. Yes? Times by the first one, x. So you have +4x. That you then multiply by 3 to get +12x. Okay? Then for the last term, you take your last term. So -2 to the power of 3, -2 cubed, which is -8. So this is equal to these 4 terms. For the next one, I just again kept my 7 outside the bracket and I FOILed out first. Then I multiplied the 7 in afterwards. But just like up here, guys, you could have done a plus and then you could have had your 7x minus 7 multiplied by your x plus 2. You could have multiplied the 7 into the first bracket first and then FOILed them out. That's right. Minus a binomial squared, which I did there. Again, here I just did the simplification in my head. What is 2x minus x? Just again, it's x, right? So this bracket is actually x squared plus x minus 2. So this simplification, again, I did in my head. And I then multiplied the 7 by those 3 terms to get me that. I multiplied the -1 in. And then I added all my right terms. But guys, I don't want you to feel discouraged if you got all of these wrong. It could, in each case, just be the case that you made one little mistake. Okay, and it threw your answer off. So rather focus on what that mistake was. For those mistakes, if you made more than one, it's also fine. All right, we're still trying to say. But then just make sure that either you are highlighting where you went wrong, or you're making a note on the side, or you're circling what you actually did wrong, instead of just doing a cross at the end and being like, oh, I didn't get it right. Okay, we need to learn from our mistakes, please. So look for what your actual mistake was. Highlight it so that you don't make that same mistake again. And if you can't find your mistake, you can bring it to me afterwards and I'll try and help you find it. Okay. Sometimes also, guys, if you're using a calculator to do the actual adding and subtracting, maybe you're just typing something wrong into the calculator. That could also happen. So if you have this exact line here, but then here you maybe don't have a 23x, and you know that you use the calculator to add all the x terms, then maybe you just type something wrong. So be something as simple as that. Okay. How do you use 14? I mean 7x. So here in this bracket, 2x minus x is x, and then I multiply 7 by 8.
You're supposed to multiply them first together. I multiplied the 7 into the third bracket.
So that's fine if you did that.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then it would be 14x.
Then you would get 14x minus 7, which will give you 7x. So maybe you made the wrong sign.
Oh, I thought that I just missed it.
That kind of that. Yeah. Also, guys, if there's so many terms, it's easy to just miss one or two of them.
Well, I find it crossing out.
Yes, that does help. Yeah, and also even like it might seem like babyish, but even if you literally highlight the ones that are like, okay, I mean, I'm not going to judge you. It looks quite nice to say usually, so and it helps. Okay, so guys, please feel free to do whatever like little notes and highlighting and underlining and circling you need to do to make it easy for yourself. What you just mustn't do is, if you are, for example, crossing out as you're adding and subtracting, you need to just cross it out in such a way that I can still read what you wrote. Okay, because I'm gonna have to give you marks for the in-between steps, obviously, and if I can't see what you wrote there, then I can't give you any marks for that. Okay. All right, we are moving on to factorizing. So I would like you to do a new heading, please. Factorizing by grouping. We've discussed it, but we haven't actually done it properly. So that is what we are doing today, factorizing by grouping. It's a subheading. We're still in chapter 1. Today's date, yes, it is the 26th. Yeah. I am going to just zoom in there just once. Do that now. Oh, sorry. So now I'm gonna forgot the two squares when we factorizing and then use the square. So when you are multiplying, you can also do the difference between squares with the answers. It's not the question. See, the question will be a bracket, two brackets, same terms, just a plus and a minus. Then your answer is a difference of two squares when you square the first term and the last term. Okay, so it's actually an opposite of it. Okay, guys, factorizing by grouping. We have discussed it a couple of times. Okay, but now we're going to do a note on it, and you guys are going to practice some more difficult ones as well. Now, the purpose of factorizing by grouping is to create a common bracket. We always need to remember that. We are not just grouping the first and second terms and then the third and fourth terms. This is we have something to do. All right, it has a purpose. We need to use grouping to create a common bracket. So, for example, if the question is saying that you need to factorize, and guys, the question is not going to say factorize by grouping. All right, you're going to get, just like in grade 9, you're going to get a bunch of factorizing questions all mixed together. You need to look at them and figure out what you're doing. Okay, so factorize. Number 1. We'll start with an easy one. Easy-ish one, I suppose. Now guys, whenever I get a factorizing question, I have a little checklist that I do. Okay, I look for 4 different types of factorizing. You can also write that down when you summarize all the different types at the end. But I usually check first to see if there's a common factor. Yeah, so you guys also do that, right? First, you just look at the 4 terms, okay? Is there a common factor in all 4 of them? No. Next time I'll check, is it a difference of 2 squares? Well, clearly it can't because there's 4 terms, all right? Or there are 4 terms, so it can't be a difference of 2 squares. Is it a trinomial? No, there are 4 terms. Again, a trinomial is supposed to be 3 terms, all right? So then I say to myself, okay, maybe I need to try grouping some of these terms together. All right, now if we look at the first 2 terms, we have A minus B. I can group those 2 together just by putting brackets around it. Okay? Then, if I look at the next 2 terms, terms 3 and 4, is there maybe a common factor there? There's an X in both of them. right? So if I take out an x as a common factor, I will be left with an a and a b. Okay, but now we need to think, am I going to take out negative x or am I going to take out positive x? Let's first just rewrite the first two terms and put brackets around them like that. A minus b. And guys, remember, the purpose is to create a common bracket. So I want to also have an a minus b bracket when I've grouped the next two terms together. Yes. And then? Well, then you just put brackets around it. I'm actually factorizing. Okay, so factorizing is actually doing the process of dividing. So you can't just put brackets around it. Okay, so we want to create a common bracket when we are trying to factorize by grouping, right? So the bracket that we have now from the first two terms is a minus b. So if I group these ones together, remember we said we're going to take out an x. Okay, but I also want to end up with an a minus b bracket. So am I going to have to write plus x and then a bracket or minus x and then a bracket? Minus x, hey? How do I know that? This sign is a plus. What do I need it to be in between the two terms in my bracket? It has to be a minus. Okay, so let's try that. Let's do minus x. Let's do minus x there. All right, remember when we are taking out a common factor, now we're just looking at those two terms, right? We've already sorted out the first two. We now have to divide each term by the common factor. Remember that's what factorizing is. We are dividing each term by negative x. So what is negative ax divided by negative x? A, good. Positive a, right? Which is what we want. We want the same as in this bracket. And then what is positive bx divided by negative x? Negative b, which is perfect. Now we have a common bracket. Okay, that is the purpose, guys. That's what we're practicing every time. Now, if we see this, and you could have got a question like this in grade 9, where you are given something like this and they ask you to factorize. Do we notice that we have a common bracket? Right? That's what we've just created. So I will just underline that bracket now. That is now what we are going to take out as a common factor. Now, guys, if you have a common bracket, you need to write it in a bracket again. Okay, you can't just write a minus b without a bracket. Yes. We'll talk about that. Now, just like we did up here when we divided each term by negative x, now over here, do we agree that again we have two terms? Well, not again, we have four terms here, but here we now have two terms, right? Now when I'm taking out this common bracket, I have to divide the first term by that common bracket and the second term by that common bracket. Okay, so we're going to do our second brackets. What is a minus b divided by a minus b? 1. Well done. And then what is negative x times a minus b divided by a minus b? Negative x, right? The brackets are going to cancel each other off. So we are left with 1 minus 2. Okay. That's one way of doing it. What we also could have done is we could have grouped terms 1 and 3 together, because both have a common factor of a there. And then I could have grouped terms 2 and 4 together. I have a common factor of b. Then my common bracket would have been 1 minus x. Okay, so let's just do that quickly, just so that you could see that there are actually different ways in which you can group. All right, you can move terms around. So you could have changed the order here. You could have said a minus ax. Right, so I'm just putting term 3 next to term 1 so that they're next to each other. And then minus b plus bx. Now I can group terms 1 and 2. And again, terms 3 and 4 in this new order. Daniel, is that what you meant? Okay, so now the only thing is we're going to have to do factorizing twice. Where here we could just put brackets around the first two terms. Okay, but it doesn't matter. Yeah, if I now take out A as a common factor, I'm going to say A bracket. What is A divided by A? 1. Negative AX divided by A is negative X. Right? I've taken A out of the common factor from the first two terms. For the second set of terms, terms 3 and 4, I'm going to take out B, but now again we need to get a 1 minus X bracket. We have a negative B plus BX. So what am I going to write in front of that B? Is it going to be positive B or negative B? Negative B, right? Negative B. Now we say negative B divided by negative B is 1, right? Anything divided by itself is 1. We have positive BX divided by negative B is negative X. And now we see that our common bracket in this case is 1 minus X. So that means that we are going to write 1 minus X in front. What is left from my first term if I divide by 1 minus X? A. Minus from my second term, if I divide by that bracket, it's going to cancel out, right? Minus B. You see that it's the same answer, the order of the brackets is just the other way around. And guys, like I said before, that doesn't matter. You can multiply in any order. For example, 2 times 3 is 6, but 3 times 2 is also 6. Okay, so you know that when you are factorizing a trinomial, for example, the order of your two brackets doesn't matter. You can have an x plus 2, x plus 3, or you can swap them around. Okay, same thing here. Both of these would be marked correct. Okay, any questions on this one, guys? Are we fine? All right, let's look at another one, number 2.
I think but didn't work last thing out.
You find the exercise because I don't know what you are referring to.
I remember these factors now.
Okay, are we looking at this one? How many terms do we have? 3. We can go through the whole list again, right? Common factor, is there a common factor in all 3 terms? No. Is that a difference of 2 squares? No. Is it a trinomial? No. It is a trinomial in the sense that it has 3 terms, but I can't actually factorize it as a trinomial. It doesn't have that normal pattern where it's like an a squared and then an a and then a constant term. Okay? So we need to try grouping. So guys, it does look like they've already done one of the groupings for us. Okay, do we see that? It kind of looks like they've taken out a 3 as a common factor and the bracket was a plus b. Now remember, if we want to keep this grouping as it is, then we need to be able to group these two together and get a common bracket. And can I do that? If I group a squared and 3b, can I actually factorize that? Is there a common factor? No. So what can I do? Hi. Multiply the bracket out. Okay, and then we're going to have 4 terms, and then we're going to have to see how we can group them. So this grouping that they've done for us is actually wrong. Okay, because it won't allow us to get a common bracket in the end. All right, so we're going to have to multiply that out. We're going to leave the a squared as it is, plus 3a plus 3. I write it backwards. Oh, sorry guys, this is supposed to be an a. Oh no. Let me just check. A squared plus a. These two are supposed to be swapped around. Sorry, can we just do this? My apologies. I just swapped them around. So let's maybe just rewrite it, okay? So that we can just discuss it from the start. Sorry about that, guys. If you have typics, you can typics it out. Otherwise, just abandon mission and or board mission and start from the beginning. I apologize. plus 3b. There we go. That's going to work. That's better. Sorry. But we still have to do the same thing. We still have to multiply it off. Okay, it's just slightly different. Let's just look at this again quickly. Our bracket that we get is 3 plus b, the bracket that they've given us. And we still see that because we still have the same last and first term here, we still can't factorize these two. Okay. So we have to multiply this bracket off. Sorry about that. So it is equal to a squared plus 3a plus ab plus 3b. There we go. That's better. Just draw a line through this one here. Okay. 4 terms. Right. Again, we can see we don't compact in all 4 terms. Not a difference of 2 squares, not a trinomial, but we can group. Right? Usually I always check, can I group the first 2 and the last 2? Does that work? Okay, let's see, does it? From the first 2, I can take out an A. Right? And then I'll be left with, what will my bracket be if I take out an A from these 2? A plus 3. Now you do actually need to be able to look ahead and kind of do that in your head. All right? So my bracket is going to be A plus 3. What can I take out here? B. And then my bracket is again going to be A plus 3. So that's perfect. Okay, that's going to work. So we can just show that we are grouping these ones and those ones. We don't have to show that, obviously. I'm just doing it for the example so that you know what we did if you're looking back at these. So A, and then we'll be left with A plus 3. Plus, from the next 2 terms, I can take on a common factor as B. And then if I divide each of those terms by B, I'm also left with A plus 3, which gives me that common bracket that I can then take out. Right, so I'm left with A plus 3. And then when I take away the A plus 3, when I divide by it, I'm going to be left with A. And then from the second term, if I take away that A plus 3, it will cancel out. I'll be left with a plus B. Okay, there we go. Right. Put it out, yes? Yes, absolutely. Yeah, no, that's fine. You could have done it the other way around. Just like I said here at the top, you could have grouped them the other way around. So you could have grouped these 2, then you would have taken out an A, you would have been left with A plus B. Here with these 2, you could have taken out a 3, again, you would have been left with A plus B. So that would have been your first bracket, and then that would have been your second one. Perfect.
So this is not that I want 40. They don't have to be next to each other.
No, so you can change the order. And in some cases, you will have to change the order. I can find an example like that. It doesn't look like it comes up here. Maybe it will come up in 8. Right, let's just do one last one quickly, and then I'm going to give you a whole bunch of them to practice. We have 2px minus x minus 4p plus 2. I would like you to try this one on your own, please. You are factorizing. You figure out how you need to group them so that you can get a common bracket. Then you take that bracket out and get to your final answer. Look. Right, that's what I did. So like I said before, I usually just check just so that I have less steps, just so that I don't complicate it more than I should. I normally just check, can I group the first two and the last two, will that work? All right, and in this case again it did. It did, so I just took out an x. So this is 2p minus 1. But then from here, again, we need to take out a negative 2, so that you have your same 2p minus 1 bracket. It's fine if you group them differently, so I'm thinking if you did terms 1 and 3, and then you just did terms 2 and 4, you just have to take out a negative 1. That also would have worked. All right, as long as you have these two brackets in the end, the order doesn't happen. Sorry, I know I said this is the last example, but I think actually I'm going to do this one with you as well. It's something different, yes. All right, number 4, a squared minus b squared plus a minus b. You want to say yes? Yes, do we notice that there in the first two terms, that's actually different to two squares? Okay, a squared minus b squared, isn't that a difference of two squares? And then how can I group the last two terms together? Is there actually a common factor there? No, so I'm just going to have to put brackets around them, right? Which I am allowed to do. Okay, so let's do that quickly. I can write underneath here, just write there, dots. A squared minus b squared is a difference of two squares. So if I factorize that, guys, what am I going to get? A squared minus b squared is going to give me a plus b, a minus b. Right? Do we remember that? How to factorize the difference of squares? You have two brackets. The square roots of each term goes into those two brackets, and then you have a plus and a minus. Plus, now I'm writing that plus, okay? The next two terms I'm also going to group together just by putting brackets around them, because I can't actually factorize them. Do we have a common bracket? Yes, a minus b. Underline that one, please. That is now the common bracket in this case. We have to write it in front. A minus b. I have two terms here at the top. Do we agree? So I must have two terms going into, well, technically two terms going into this bracket. You'll see now what's going to happen. From my first term, if I divide this by the underlined bracket, that bracket is going to cancel off. What's left? A plus b. From the second term, if I divide by the underlined bracket, it's going to cancel off. What's left? Plus 1.
In the same.
Now put it in the same bracket. Yes, you could put an extra bracket there, but it's just going to be bracket a plus 1 plus b, which is just the same as a plus 1 plus b. Sorry, a plus b plus 1. Well,
Yeah.
so what I'm saying, sorry, I don't know what I actually said now. No, let me just write this. This you could have written like this: a plus b plus 1. But that will just simplify to that. Okay, so because it's all pluses, I didn't put in extra brackets. You could if you want, just to make sure. But guys, you can't leave your answer like that. Okay, you will have to simplify it, and that must be your final answer. Okay, but you can put this in as an in-between thing. That's perfectly fine. All right, so guys, what I wanted to show you with this example is be on the lookout for other types of factorizing within a factorizing by grouping question. Okay, sometimes I don't think it's going to come up in the homework, but we will cover it eventually. Sometimes it might happen that you have 4 terms, and maybe the first 3 terms form a trinomial or something, and then the last term, yeah, we'll do an example like that tomorrow. Okay, when we actually work with trinomials. But that could also happen, that you can maybe group 3 terms and 1 term. Okay, I'll just check through the homework that I've decided to give you and make sure that that doesn't happen. But definitely difference of 2 squares we need to be on the lookout for. Okay, guys, your homework is going to seem like a lot because it's from different exercises, because they cover different things in the different exercises. So the first one is 1.11 on page 18. want you to do these 4 from that question. Exercise 1.12 is on the same page. And I want you to do 1F to H. Now guys, in this exercise specifically, you're going to see that they often are giving you 6 terms that you must factorize. All right, you can group 2 terms together 3 times, or you could possibly group together 3 and 3. Okay, it's not always going to be 4 terms. Are you guys hearing what I'm saying? Or you're writing down. So especially in this one, see if you can group 3 and 3 maybe. All right, so here I'm just going to write 3 and 3. We didn't do any examples like that, but it was the same kind of concept as up here. And then for exercise 1.14, these are now questions that are more similar to the last one. Group 3 and 3 together instead of 2 and 2. There are 6 terms in the
We can.
after the assembly. No, assembly is before second break. Oh, assembly is before second break. After period 5. Okay, start working on that, you guys. It is a lot. You have 20 minutes. This is for tomorrow. Yes. No, we haven't. No? How would we do? Remember when I said yesterday you have to bring your book?
Yeah.
There's multiple people here that doesn't have books. We understand from that. Oh no. Okay, I'm gonna give you mine and I'm gonna take the picture. Guys, I don't want you on your phones while you're in class, which is why you have to bring your textbook. So if you have your book in your locker, go get it now, please. We just see that person we can.